Did you ever wish that a Goblin King with spectacular eye makeup would come and take your screaming baby brother away?
Did you ever wish for your own labyrinth quest to conquer, complete with riddles, fantastical creatures, and a bog of eternal stench?
If you like your 80s movies set to the tone of a rock opera and Jim Henson's cool yet kind of creepy puppet creations, you might be a Xennial and you might be a Labyrinth fan. And we are too. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny.
And I'm Katie, and you're listening to Generation in Between, a Xennial podcast, where we remember, revisit, and sometimes relearn all kinds of things from our 80s childhoods and 90s teen young adulthoods.
And today we are going to be talking about a cult classic, y'all, the movie Labyrinth, starring David Bowie himself and Jennifer Connelly, a very young Jennifer Connelly. Mm-hmm. And we have a special guest and Labyrinth superfan to join us today in this discussion. And it is my friend, Jamila Talbot.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for having me on. I am so excited. I'm like being chill right now, but I'm very excited.
I love this so much. So I'm going to full stop before we go any farther, be honest with our listeners. So everybody knows we have sound gremlins. Katie and I also have learned things the hard way with this podcast. We have to just screw stuff up a bunch. And then we're like, oh yeah, that didn't work. So we already recorded an amazing episode with Jamila. That was like an hour and a half long, 2 hours, including the after show. We had this great discussion of Labyrinth. And then we realized in the playback, the sound was shit.
Yep. Good job getting the censoring done early on this one. We'll put the big E. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could hear us. We might pull things from it for social if it's things we don't discuss again today or like really fun little conversations. But Jamila's so awesome. We were just like, you all are used to us sounding kind of terrible from time to time, but we didn't want to do that to her. So we're back we're going to talk to her again today.
We are. So this is take 2 and hopefully so Jamila and I have been friends for a while and we'll talk about that in a minute. So we got all of our like catching up out of our system with that episode. So hopefully we'll talk more focused, but I don't know. Jamila is a kindred spirit to us. And as we all liked on Generation Between, we like to go down rabbit holes of discussion. She does as well. So above all else, we're going to have a good time on the second try.
Take 2.
Are we recording, by the way? Did you hit record?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just making sure. That would suck if we went through this again. And then we were like, we didn't record. Okay. So anyway, so let me tell y'all a little bit. Oh, look, this is the one I have without her bio. Where'd it go?
Oh
my gosh.
I should be able to find it.
Okay.
Well, why don't Jamila say hello while I look up your official bio? Tell us who you are.
Hello. I am a Xennial. I was born in 1980.
Oh, me too.
So I am like really, really very, very, very Xennial. I do remember life prior to the internet. So that's cool. Awesome. I do want to say while you're looking that up that I told you guys I was going to make a hardcore like 80s, 90s reference. So guys, I'm fucking old. I'm in my 40s and just so you know, and we talked about this last time, your body just begins to break down indiscriminately. Like at 40, I think I was in the hospital for the first time at 39. Anyway, so today I'm in the middle of a procedure, which is called a capsule procedure, where they have you swallow a capsule that's blinking, and then it like takes pictures of your digestive system.
What?
Yes. So I have on this whole like set. It's amazing. I have to watch this blue blinking light. It's great.
Oh my God. So you're doing this while you're recording a podcast episode?
Yes, I am. Because I multitask. That's what I do. But it's been so many like Miss Frizzle references from me today. I like, because it looks like a little submarine, a little blinky light submarine. And I was like, oh, these kids are going to get a good one today. Like, I hope everybody signed their permission slips. And I really wanted to share that with the nurse who gave me the capsule, but she did not look like the kind of person who would enjoy my jokes.
She's not
so
old enough. Okay, for those of y'all that don't understand her reference, that is Magic School Bus. Okay. Yes. Magic School Bus. And I remember that where they go in the body. Like that was a favorite episode in my house. I don't know. But okay, I found your bio. This is going well. Good. So now I'm going to tell y'all the official info about Jamila. So Jamila is the owner of Mama Loves Herbs, a company that encourages everyone to heal through sound, good vibes, herbal remedies, self-care, and loving community. She is an herbalist, a sound healer, a doula, mother of 5, a wife of 1, and a writer. She is mostly lawful good, but sometimes chaotic evil. Same. And as an 80s baby, she has a deep love of Jim Henson and most of the Muppet movies, which probably accounts for the chaotic evil.
Yeah.
Yes. Now y'all can see why we have her on here. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, we had a Miss Frizzle reference in the first 2 minutes. So we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good so far. And the last time we recorded was the first time I had met Jamila.
Yes.
So I can't fake it and be like, oh, nice to meet you. But I will say we're newer friends, but fast friends. And of the 3 of us, which we're going to get into the labyrinth here in a minute, I was the only one who had never seen it until I watched it for this recording. So I think that's kind of good to know going into this because you all, I think you have done a great job kind of saying, this is how I felt as a kid. And then also this is how I feel as an adult. But I'm just this is how I feel watching this movie for the first time at 42 years old. So you're going to get all sorts of perspective here today on Labyrinth.
Yeah. So before we go any further, we waited too long in the last time we recorded to do this. So Jamila, since you are our designated super fan today, for those who may not know the movie Labyrinth or who have not seen the movie Labyrinth, can you share with us in your own words what this movie is about?
I sure can. So this movie is about a little girl. Well, she's not a little girl. She's a tween named Sarah. And Sarah is a horrible and a wildly unlikable character, but we'll get into that later. She is called home from her adventures to babysit her baby brother, who is her half brother because it's between her father and her stepmother, and that causes all kinds of drama for her. She's horrible to the baby, and when the baby cries like babies do because there's a thunderstorm outside, she says that she wishes that the Goblin King would come take her baby brother away, and thus starts the Wizard of Oz-esque adventure, only if Wizard of Oz was super queer and made by strange people. So she goes on this adventure into the labyrinth, listens to no one, gets more confused than she needed to get, kind of gets together with this motley crew of incredibly likable characters, even Hoggle, and we'll get to that in a second. And she ends up at the very end saving her brother from the Goblin King. And it's a happily ever after. The Goblin King is played by David Bowie, who was literally the best thing in the entire movie, and why the movie worked.
Yes.
Because he's David Bowie.
Because he's so David Bowie as the Goblin King.
Yeah. Like when I say he's David Bowie, I mean he's not acting.
No.
He's just being David Bowie.
Yes.
And if you like David Bowie, this movie is and puppets, this movie is for you.
And the puppets. I love me some Jim Henson puppets, and we will get into that in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to tell you watch your blankie because it is getting on your mic. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm wrapped up in a blanket.
Yeah, sorry. Everybody's probably like, "What? What does that mean?"
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give some context here.
They probably would have thought that you were just telling me, Katie, watch your blankie.
Yeah, sorry. Jamila has on this amazing soft blanket. We're on Zoom with her, and we probably should have said that we're on Zoom, not an in-person guest. So this is our first time ever doing a Zoom guest episode. So yay! Anyway, so just watch your blankie because we don't want to mess up.
And listeners, good advice for you too. Watch your blankie.
Watch your blankie.
I don't know why or how.
Watch your blankets, okay?
Watch them, okay?
Okay.
You know.
So now that we have a little background on what the movie's about, before we get into Jamila and her super fanness, Katie, we need to know then. So this was the first time you've watched it.
Yes.
Obviously, I love the movie. We know I like weird 80s movies. I like puppets. I like fantasy. That's not your jam.
It's not. Even when you said Wizard of Oz, I remember being a kid and not really enjoying that movie either. I like the music from it. I like the stage version of Wizard of Oz, not the movie so much. And I love Judy Garland. But anyway, neither here nor there. The topic area, not my favorite. I thought it was weird. I mean, it was entertaining in the way that, like, I did feel like it was such a time capsule, knowing how big Jim Henson's puppets were at that time and like the influence of those. I did not like the music. I was like, what is this music? I did like David Bowie, and I like Jennifer Connelly, who's the terrible teenager. I mean, she was very unlikable, but she's also a good actress. So I was like, yeah, I don't like her. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
And I will say the puppets were incredibly well made.
Oh my gosh.
And like the detail level, which I know we're going to talk about a little more. But I mean, I probably won't watch it again. But I'm glad I did to come to this discussion. Is that okay to say?
That was me sad gasping, just in case anybody didn't know. But that was me sad gasping about Katie not wanting to watch it again. But that's fine. You know what? That's fine. You're allowed to be wrong. Everybody's allowed to be wrong. So that's fine.
I get one. And this is my one.
Well, you know, it's so funny because Katie and I, we have had lots of episodes where we revisit things that I still love so much, like cartoon. Like Katie's not a big cartoon person. I still love cartoons. And we mentioned this when we talked to you last time. I did this whole forgotten cartoons of the 80s and 90s. So we talked about Snorks. Do you remember Snorks?
Yes.
And
yes, I do.
Katie looked at me like, what the hell is this nonsense? And I'm like, it's so weird and dumb. That's why I love it. So I love the weirder and the more ridiculous, which is what the 80s were. Let's be real. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
completely.
And that's why I like David Bowie, because he's so extra. He just is this entity of weird, and you don't really know what category to put him in for anything.
Which is
and
the point,
I love that.
Right? That's the point. Yeah. I love that.
I love that. Okay, so tell us, Jamila, what is your memory of when you first saw this movie back in the day?
Okay, so I had to have been maybe 6 or 7 when I watched this movie for the first time. And just for extra context, like my family, I grew up on Jim Henson everything. So this was like naturally part of that. And I remember, first of all, being fascinated by a man in eye makeup, and like David Bowie's whole situation was just captivating for me. It was like I was confused at parts, and like, but I loved it. And then just the whole world that they pull you into the movie, I was there for it. Also remember being scared and in some parts of it, because it was so vivid and so well done and so odd. Like the thing, and I didn't talk about this last time, but the when they go into the oubliette, and because this is how much of a super fan I am, when they go into the oubliette and Jared throws the ball, and it becomes this like, oh, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the spinning machine.
Yeah.
And it takes up the entire like hallway, and it's just menacing. I remember being terrified of that, but strangely not scared of Jareth.
Right?
Yeah, like he did some like messed up things and also stole a baby, but like that didn't. For some reason, I was like, but he looks like he'd be fun. I don't know. So that, I think for me, being a kid, it sort of made me really love fantasy and love like the escapism, even though I could never have articulated it, of course, back then, the escapism of the worlds that Jim Henson was known for building.
Yeah.
I was like all in. I was all in.
So I don't remember when I watched this for the first time as a kid, because I too grew up on Jim Henson. Like Fraggle Rock and all the Muppet movies. We watched the Muppet Show, and I have an older sister. So I remember watching it always. I just always remember Jim Henson being part of my childhood, right? I don't remember the first time I watched Labyrinth, but when I rewatched it as an adult, my husband has never seen it. My kids have never seen it. Well, Caden didn't watch it with us because that's not his jam. He's like you, Katie. He doesn't enjoy that mess. So, but Cooper was like, this is kind of scary. How come all this stuff from the 80s is scary? And I'm like, it really was. We had Labyrinth, we had the Dark Crystal, we had Neverending Story, Hello, Traumatic, when the horse dies. What was his name? The kid's name was Atreyu. What was the horse's name? Artax.
I can't believe you forgot Artax.
And then the Nothing. I mean, we're gonna do a whole episode on Neverending Story because let's talk about all the metaphors in that movie. But I think watching it as an adult, and we talked about this before, the things that I noticed were hilarious because I don't think as a kid I would have picked up on the same things. But I'm with you. I think why I like Jim Henson so much is it was fantasy and it was this whole other world, but he didn't do it in a cutesy way. He made puppets that were magical and awesome and intricate, and some were cute, but he made sure he had stuff that was weird and different and even kind of scary. And I don't know, for some reason as a kid, I really liked it. And I liked how weird it was, but I don't think I knew that, I don't think I could have articulated that either. But yeah.
Well, it was we were submerged in scary things in the 80s.
Legit.
I'm not going to say that and I'm going to make this comparison. I'm going to say that I don't think that the 80s shows or children's cinema was smarter than children's cinema now, but I am going to say that it was far less sensitive. It treated us as we were far less sensitive than I think kids are treated now. Although we are starting to arc into what I call the shadow work narrative of children's movies, where they're just addressing these deep emotional layers and traumas that we just created trauma in the 80s.
Right.
And kids could handle it. We were the world is terrible and there are villains and monsters everywhere, and y'all are just gonna have to be exceptional to make it through, and you might die or your friends might die. It's fine. It's fine. You'll get through it. Whereas now we're oh, your grandma is the source of your trauma and it's generational, and you're going to need some therapy because your uncle's been living in the walls for, y'all know what movie I'm talking about. Because your uncle's been living in the walls for years. Right. So I'm not going to say one is better or worse. I am going to say that I feel in the 80s, we had a great esteem for kids' capacity for imagination and capacity for trauma and for darkness, and how much we enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I just feel we enjoyed being scared, and we didn't realize how iffy that was until we were adults looking back on it.
Yeah. Well, we recorded last week our Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark episode and kind of had a conversation around how, the book banners and all of that, which, totally other episode. Go listen to it if you haven't yet. But this idea that kids, it's sometimes nice to put a face on the things they're feeling, even if it's a scary face. So even if it's the unknown or trauma or fear or morbidity, right? Kids do think about these things. And I think when you were just talking about the capacity, the word patronizing kind of came to mind. That I don't know either. Time will tell. If we're patronizing too much in some of our children's literature and our children's television and our children's films, and streaming and all those things. But like, we weren't really doing that back then. It was like, yo, you can handle it. And maybe we were scared, but like, it was still kind of handing it to us to figure out, as opposed to now where it's like just a little more mild or delivered a little more patronizing way. Like, we need to help kids process this instead of like, here, process this.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
I think there's arguments on both sides as a parent of 5 humans. Like I'm on both sides of it. When you guys were talking about Never Ending Story, and I think I may have told this story before, but I remember watching that with my kid and like being worried that the Artax thing was going to hit her the same way that it hit me. As my little kid self, like I was like bracing for like, oh, we might have to pause the movie and let her cry it out because she's way more sensitive than I remember. This is the really important part of it. She's way more sensitive than I remember being back then, right? Not that I wasn't, but, you know, I was like 7, you know, but we watched it and she was like 5 or 6, maybe 6. And she's like watching with this like look on her face, you know, when your kids get the look. And I looked over at her and the whole Artax scene plays out and I am like waiting for this fallout. And she looks at me with her sweet, sweet face, like right into my eyeballs. And she's like, what does a horse have to be sad about? Oh, and for context, Never Ending Story, the horse, I don't want to spoil it, but like, spoiler alert, the horse sinks into the bog of sadness, where if you're sad, you go down into this bog and this kid loses his horse to sadness. And my daughter was like, what does a horse have to be sad about? And I was like, oh shit. Wow.
How
like,
smart.
Wow. Because like, like little kid me was like all into it. I didn't even think about why does a horse need to be sad. I was just like, no, Artax.
I know.
Don't be sad.
I mean, I honestly, until you said that just now, never have thought that. I've always just been so upset that he died because he was sad. Like, correct. What does he have to be freaking sad about?
What does he have to be? Like, the kid has a lot to be sad about.
Correct.
Atreyu was like living his like trauma, but so I think that, you know, we have this tendency generationally to want to like gild the lily about our personal generational experience.
Yeah.
But I think while we did go through, I definitely think we went through a period of time, late 90s, early aughts, where we were patronizing children, where we were like not handling anything. It actually became this sort of frenetic, frantic sort of cartoons and things that were just about like entertaining. But I think we're now moving into this idea that kids are a lot smarter than we gave them credit for. But we also want these kids to heal backwards into like our brokenness. And to like speak into our brokenness and not carry it forward. But also, I think where the 80s nailed it was like, these kids can handle it. They can handle these deep stories. They can handle, you know, men who are just on the edge of being in drag. They can handle these darker themes. And some kids like to be scared. Kids like to feel feelings because they're not processing things on that deeper level. They're just seeing what's in front of them. So having these little pockets of fear and these high highs and low lows, it actually triggers something in them. And is entertaining on its own level. Now, do I think the 80s took it too far? You know, I've met a lot of 80s babies and we are kind of, and I'm just going to say we are kind of a mess.
Kind of a mess, yes.
So maybe, and maybe that's why we dissociate as a culture so much. But like also, Yeah, super great. It was great.
Yeah.
But also, okay, so we're going deep early today. I love it
We
very
are.
much. Okay. So before we get going on anything else, let's do two things. Are we ready? Everybody is gonna share some of their favorite things about Labyrinth, and then some of the things you do not like. So Jamila's gonna start because she's the super fan.
Okay.
So tell us
Yes.
some of your favorite things about Labyrinth. I mean, you've already said some, but
Yes,
the main
yes,
thing.
because there's a lot.
Yes.
I've already talked about David Bowie. And I just want to give some additional things on that. David Bowie was unapologetically David Bowie. And
Yes.
I loved that he took Jareth and made him a little queer and a lot strange and a little sinister without being over the top terrifying. And had this like way of making him sinister but playful, which
Yeah.
is very, very difficult to do, and not everyone can get it right. Tom Hiddleston comes to mind with Loki, like that,
Oh,
like,
I'm in love with
God,
Loki.
why do I like you? But also, you're just objectively like terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Loki would totally steal a baby. Anyway, so that's one of the things I liked. I love the artistry of the movie and the practical special effects. And this is me speaking from my adult self. Because it's just beautiful. Like objectively, if you look at how they put that movie together, knowing that this was not CGI, these were people spending hours and hours and hours putting little hairs on, um, on these, oh my gosh, these goblins and constructing entire sets and worlds and buildings. And this stuff was done by hand. It's gorgeous. So really the immersiveness of the movie, I adore it. Even now, like watching, like there's some things that I'm like, this is like dated, but just a lot of the artistry of it has held up
Yeah.
over time. And then the little motley crew of characters, I like them. I like Hoggle, and I like he's just despicable, but I like him. And Sir Minimus, I don't know. Sir Minimus and the throwback to the dog, and like there are just so many things in that movie, but those are my particular faves.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there because
I
there's a lot.
agree. I agree with you on the artistry. That is one of my favorite things about Jim Henson as a whole was his creative vision, and his ability to execute his vision is just it does withstand the test of time, because like you were saying, everything was made by hand. Like all the puppets, I mean, and the detail, like Troy and I were sitting there watching it and we are like, God, the detail of and there were lots of puppets. Like there were so many. And like you were just saying, like every little hair, every eyeball, every, facial expression, that was his visionary, like his vision. And I just love that. I love fantasy. So anything with talking animals or goblin, like I'm here for it 100%. I like the music.
She just stopped and stared at me.
I love y'all, listeners know this because I've mentioned it plenty of times. I love me a synthesizer. And if you like a synthesizer, it is in Labyrinth. And I also love David Bowie. That song, I forgot the name of the song about where he's throwing the baby around to the goblins.
Yeah, dance, yes. Baby dance.
Yes,
I'm sorry, Magic Dance.
Magic Dance. I freaking
I was
love
gonna say
song.
Magic Baby, but yeah. Something with dancing and magic and a baby.
Come on.
I feel like we got all of the different like arrangements of that. So that's cool.
All the remixes.
I love it. I know. It's so listen, I'm not trying to say it like is like award-winning music, whatever. actually, maybe it is to me, but I love it. I love the music. I love the puppets. And I do love David Bowie. We didn't address his codpiece yet. How did we make it this far?
Oh my God.
We've gotten pretty far without that.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
Maybe it needs a
explain.
whole segment.
Because if it's our younger folks, they may not even know what that is.
Well, yeah.
Well, they should.
He
They
wears
should.
a giant codpiece in his outfit under his tights. I don't know.
I just want to say, I just got to break in and say that was wildly unnecessary. It did not need to be there.
It was totally intentional, though.
He could have just had his leggings and they could have done a little tuck and that would have it would have been a non-issue. But I just like to think about the fact that these people sat in a room together and they were like, you know what this needs? Giant codpiece. That's because it's so obnoxiously obvious.
I want to know who it was that made that decision, though. Like,
it's probably David Bowie. You know,
he was
like, I will do it under one condition: inappropriate codpiece, hair, makeup, queer facing, all of this, and then hyper masculinity. So it is like, it's like a mullet, right? So it's like drag on the top, hyper masculinity at the bottom. And
that's such a great way to explain it.
It is.
I know.
That's exactly it.
There's something for everyone. I'm just saying. Little something everybody. But also, when we watched this, Cooper, my 12-year-old, the second Gareth came on screen, his face goes all crazy. He looks at me, he's like, why are his pants like that?
Just why? Why is what we want to know. Why?
Because
we just don't ask questions. But he was just like, what? Like, why? I'm like, I don't know. And Troy was like, it's a little much.
You think? Oh my God.
Because you can't help but gawk at it. Like, you cannot. It's like in spandex right there. Like,
I know.
You're supposed to gawk at it. Let's be clear. Like,
it's hilarious.
that was for us, ladies. Okay, that was for the gays and the bays who just need a little spice in their life. That was it.
Yeah,
that's it.
All right, so that's some of what we like. I know you weren't a very big fan.
No, so I agree on the detailed puppets and worlds. Like the aesthetic of the movie for me was really good. Like even between the real world and the fantasy world, I felt like there was cohesion there. I think it was really smart to use the premise of a thunderstorm to get into it. I thought that was great. Like the cinematography and all those things, it made it just easier on the eye to watch. And very detailed. And when you do, like you guys said already, when you think about this is not CGI. I think you said there was maybe a little bit the wall with the that you go through or whatever. Yeah. But generally speaking, the walls were walls. Yeah. And the rooms were actual rooms. And, so and the puppets were puppets. They weren't computer animated things just put on the screen later. The real life actors were interacting with these puppets. Right. And I just think watching a movie like that, when you kind of think about it while you're watching it, is very impressive and very cool. I liked, I spoke about this the first time we recorded. I did I know she was unlikable, but the main girl, Sarah, I liked that she kind of took this adventure on her own, of her own doing, I might add, and didn't necessarily need to be rescued. She did have some help along the way, and then help she didn't take, and made bad choices as she went. But to me, that was just so much more interesting than someone going out on a hero's quest who's kind of already a hero. She was kind of trying to fix something she messed up. And then even at the end, she didn't have a huge character arc where she'd changed.
No, absolutely.
And I liked that from an entertainment perspective, because it was this feels real, and so I enjoyed watching her character in it. I don't know. Those are the main things I liked. I didn't mention music.
I know,
but I do. And David Bowie is a default. I loved David Bowie. Loved him in this movie.
Okay. Because he's entertaining. Great. He is. Whether you like his music or not. So much.
He is. A man's a delight.
Generally, I like his music. Yeah. I just didn't like the music in this movie. But I like David Bowie as a musician.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm going to take a moment to repeat something that we said that we talked about last time that I think is really important. Objectively, okay, and I know this is gonna hurt some feelings. I'm just gonna say it. Objectively, the music of Labyrinth is not great. It is a time capsule, okay?
Mhm.
It was great within the context of the time that it was put out into the world. It is great now from a point of nostalgia. Like, it gives you, if you heard Magic Dance when you were a little kid, it was a bop, okay? And now as an adult, you're like, this song is a banger. Don't tell me anything else, okay? But I think in the context of, 2024 music, it's hokey and it's a little it's very, very dated
I mean,
and
it's
kind of
campy.
silly.
It's campy
Yeah.
and cheesy, which I love.
Yes.
But I think it's important when we're grading music, some music is timeless, of course, but I think there's also some great value to music being a time capsule.
Yeah.
And being nostalgic, but we also need to be honest about like what this is. I'm not going to get into a fist fight with somebody who's like, Magic Dance sucked. I'm going to be like, yeah, probably, but I love it because, this movie is part of the fabric of who I am as a person. Also, I like that I can go into a crowd of 80s children and say, you remind me of a babe, and we can be on it for like 5-10 minutes because someone is going to say what babe and just on and on and on. I like that.
I'm doing that one day. I'm just going to go into now. It's going to be crickets, Katie, if nobody answers me.
No. Just do it on Facebook. Just do it on Facebook. Every once in a while, every year or so, I will that's my Facebook status is you remind me of a babe.
Oh, I love it.
No picture, no tags, and I just let the magic work. It's a whole spell.
That's our next podcast reel. That's it.
That's actually a good idea.
Just gonna say it and see who answers us. We really suck at our TikTok, so maybe that'll bring in the people.
This might be the breakthrough that we've been looking for.
We're trying. Okay, so now that we talked about things we liked, let's get into the things about this movie we did not like. And Katie, you can't spend too long.
I say let's go backward this time. That way we end with Jamila.
Let's do that.
Okay. So I already kind of said I didn't love the music. I don't know. I just found it, again, I'm watching it for the first time in 2024. Just kind of too dated for me, slow in some parts. Like I had trouble like staying engaged.
Yeah, she fell asleep.
Oh, yeah.
Like repeatedly.
Well, that's probably not the movie's fault. So in my studio, I have this really nice lobby. And I can say that because my in-laws donated some furniture. It's beautiful out there now. And we have a TV. And so when families are waiting for their kids, they can just chillax. So I'm like, you know what? Nobody's here. I'm going to watch it in my lobby.
Because she also has 5 kids. So
yes,
busy house.
So I had my snacks. We had worked out.
Yeah.
And recorded.
And you worked your other job.
And I worked my other job like super early. Yeah. So it's like 1:00 in the afternoon at this point, noon or 1. I don't know. And I've been up since like 3 or 4. Okay. So I get my snacks, my blankie. I'm all by myself. It's raining outside. I start watching it. Sure enough, I fell asleep.
Multiple times.
Woke up, rewound to where I was, fell asleep. Eventually I made it through. But that I don't think was the movie's fault.
Maybe that's why it felt slow.
Because it took me 6 hours to watch it. Legit.
Yeah. It was a slog. Yeah.
It was a lot. But yeah, I mean, those are the main. I wouldn't say I like don't like it. I just would say, like I said, I probably wouldn't watch it again for those reasons. Yeah.
I did not. I know you like the main character, Sarah. I did not stand her. She was on my nerves. Like, she was mean. Like, I could not, like, sitting there at Cooper even, and we'll talk about the whole David Bowie thing in a second. But Cooper was like, wow, like when she walks in and she's like screaming at her baby brother, like to stop crying and like all this stuff. And I'm like, dang, and I don't even like babies. Okay. But I don't scream at them. Like, I just hit the mic with my face.
There you go. So, that's what you get for saying you don't like babies.
I'm not gonna anyways. So I thought she was mean. She was annoying. She didn't listen when people were trying to help her. She was stubborn. And then at the end, I don't feel like she really learned much.
Mm-mm.
So I didn't really love her.
I loved that.
I also, and we're going to talk about this a little more, I did not like that little scene with her and David Bowie, even though it was like her dream sequence, fantasy sequence, where it has that weird sense of, are they like attracted? Is he like, because even Cooper, like they were doing their slow dance in this sequence. And if y'all have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And Cooper looked at me and he goes, isn't that pedophilia?
But also, sure, yes.
And I mean, like I laughed, but then I was like, I'm like, well, and so then Troy's like, well, kind of, but not really, because that's not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, to me, it was awkward. I just didn't think, I felt like it just didn't need to be there. And I know Jamila will talk about it in a second too, about it's her fantasy and it's not supposed to be reality. It just gave me the heebies and I didn't like it.
Well, yeah, seeing like a grown man with a enlarged codpiece dancing with what we've been told is a teenage girl alone in his kingdom,
right,
is troubling.
And I know it was like her fantasy sequence while she was under those drugs or whatever. It's such an
she was in the yeah. I mean, I think we just may as well like address it now because we're in it. Like I before I had asked this question of like, is it problematic? Is the relationship between Jareth and Sarah problematic? Because I actually, the last time I went to watch the movie, I went into it. Now I'm a mom of 5 daughters, so like this is the thing that like my antennae are up about, you know, these sort of things. And so I went into it watching for this inappropriate interaction between Sarah and Jareth and whether he was trying to seduce her, like actively. Was he chasing her? And so I asked them last episode, was it problematic? And, you know, you've heard from both of them. My position on it was that if you watch the movie as a complete narrative, he goes out of his way at every opportunity whenever he interacts with Sarah, even when he stole Toby, he does not really interact with her very much. Right. He escapes her at every opportunity. He's not drawing her in. He actually does things to push her away from him, by like putting her in the bog of stench, putting her in the oubliette. So he's not seducing Sarah. Right. He does not actually want her. He wants the baby. And it's only when he's almost desperate that he moves into this fantasy of, or creating this fantasy around her desire to be this princess and to have this, like, because that's how the movie starts. For those of you who have not seen the movie, it starts off with her in this dramatic scene where she is this princess, and, you know, and they do a lot of foreshadowing, blah, 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 blah. So, and even when you look in her bedroom, she's got all of the pieces there for this scene. Mm-hmm. Now that I've said that, because I don't want this to be like me justifying like anything. Visually, is it icky? Yeah. The optics of it are not great. And because of what Danny mentioned, and I think you mentioned it too, Katie, the hyper masculinity, the cod piece, I think had they softened him down a little bit where he wasn't, well, first of all, had he been younger,
right,
had he not been so aggressively masculine, so you're thinking about like what's behind that cod piece. I'm thinking about it. I'm just, you know, I can't get away from it. So you have that kind of hyper masculinity and David Bowie's sexuality, which also cannot be avoided.
Right.
in this romance adjacent scene with a teenage girl.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can get out of like the problematic optics of it. But I do not think that that was the intention of the scene. I think that we are now experiencing sort of the back look of like, oh, I see it now, right? Because we understand more, we've grown more, you know, in our understanding. But I think when that scene was created, I don't think that it was created with this eye to like make this romance between this girl and this adult man.
Right.
But again, you know, it's that whole intent versus impact, right? The impact is real. And I don't know. I look, I got daddy issues. So like,
Don't
I'm
we
sorry
all?
if my dad is, I'm sorry if my dad is listening to this. But I have daddy issues. So, you know, so the older man thing is fine. But, you know, I also, you know, there's an ick to it, but I don't think the ick was intentional. I think it was more an oversight.
Oh, an oversight. Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, like you were saying, narrative wise,
right?
She's in that scene, it's like this character from a book,
right,
that she's into, or a play that she's into, is what's happening. It's just that up before that scene, like she's been in real life in the movie interacting with that character. It's not like she's sitting there reading a book and then the fantasy starts.
Right.
We've seen them interacting this whole time.
Right.
Also, and I just thought of this when you were talking about the hypermasculinity, it's really the only time in the movie, I guess maybe the first scene a little bit because she's in costume, where she's hyper feminine. And I think that kind of rubbed me funny too, because one thing I really liked when she was out adventuring is, and again, it was 80s style, but like her clothing was somewhat androgynous. Like she did have that bracelet on and things like that.
She had a vest on. Yeah, she
had a vest. Like it was very like nothing tight or like form fitting, or, you know, she was a girl on a journey, but like nothing really signaled that into what she was doing. And so I think maybe the switch for that too was just a lot, like visually for me.
Also, can we talk about what was happening in the background at the party? Because I was getting some Eyes Wide Shut vibes. Like, I swear to God, like while I was watching, like now I say it, y'all see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's like people around in masks and they're dancing, but they're all like looking at her like all crazy weird. And I'm like, I looked at Troy and I was like, this is like Eyes Wide Shut. And he was like, what? And I'm like, never mind. You probably haven't even seen that. So like, like never mind, but I know what I'm talking about. And I was like, that I think too really impacted on how I saw it. Now, obviously, as a kid, I would not pick up on like this masquerade sex party.
It feels predatory.
Yeah.
And I think part of that's David Bowie's character being an adult and all of that. But you're right. Part of it's the setup that you feel unsafe for her.
Yeah.
It was definitely predatory. I think it was intentional. And this is just me, you know, of course, speculating. I think that you were supposed to feel uncomfortable. I don't think you were supposed to feel sexually uncomfortable.
Right.
But I think there was supposed to be an overlay of dread on that scene, because when she's going into that scene, she's in this junkyard and she's nostalgic about, you know, she finds her teddy bear and she's sitting at her what do you call that? Her like table,
her vanity,
and her vanity, where she had a scene where she was thinking about, at the beginning of the movie, where she was thinking about her mother who had passed away. And so I think that what that scene does well is gives you this fantasy in this pocket of dread and squirmy discomfort. And like even the way that people are looking at her is uncomfortable. It was not exciting. It was not fun. It was like, I mean, I remember being a little kid and just being kind of like, this is not right. So part of me, like, again, acknowledging that we're talking about a grown man seducing a child, and I don't want to in any way like hand wave that, right? But also I think that some of this is that the discomfort is intentional. And when we experience discomfort as people, we storytell around that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's almost heightening all of these things to say, like, I am uncomfortable by this scene. Let me figure out why I'm uncomfortable. Okay, the adult child thing is immediately uncomfortable. Cool. But also, like, visually, because also that scene was visually different than anything. The colors were different. The lighting was different. The soft focus, which you didn't see anywhere else. That movie had an inordinate amount of glitter throughout.
Yeah.
It was so much glitter. But that scene was tonally different than everything else going on.
Yeah.
So I think that accounts for some of the discomfort. But as soon as they're out of that scene, he doesn't pick up the strand. He doesn't keep it going. He doesn't, like, it doesn't mark a tone change in their relationship, which those kind of scenes usually do. Like, usually when you're telling a story of like two characters, a man and a woman, and then they have this like scene like that, and then it shifts their relationship. It didn't really shift their relationship. She was still pissed at him. He was still avoidant, and getting increasingly more fragile as she got closer, which I think is a thing we didn't mention. His own like coming apart as his narrative is getting thwarted. So yeah, so like I say all this to say, like, y'all, like, watch it and process it and see what comes up for you. I just don't want it to be a throwaway. Oh, hang on, I'm covering again. I just don't want it to be a throwaway of like the easy reach, which was the intent of the movie. Because I don't think it was. I just think that scene could have been, if we remade that movie, I feel like that scene would not make it.
Right. Oh, it wouldn't.
I feel like that scene would just be like
I feel like it could have been done differently, right? Like, I feel like there still could have been the party. It still could have been uncomfortable. He still could be like walking around stalking her and maybe not have that awkward ass dance moment. Like, I feel like they still could have done it. But you know what? It's interesting that you say that, because Katie and I do a separate series called Nostalgic or Problematic, where we rewatch stuff. Yes. And something we are learning is things from the 80s and 90s. We can never say one is 100% one or 100% the other. It's usually a little bit of both. Sometimes there's a more percentage of, nostalgic than problematic. Sometimes it's the reverse. But I feel like that is probably the one thing in the movie that is problematic, ? That could be
gone. Yeah.
Because I can't really think of anything else.
No, the rest of the time it's very it's appropriate. Like, he is avoidant of her. Like, he goes out of his way to be avoidant of her. That scene is just a break in that whole. And I'm very, when I watch things with the problematic lens, right? I also try to be aware of, like, is my perspective labeling this problematic? Which, by the way, is totally, like, I'm not trying to say that that's not valid. That is 100% valid. Your perspective and how you interpret things absolutely is valid and matters. But I do invite people to understand that my perspective creates this view for me. Right. So I try to, like, identify that as I'm watching things. Does my perspective, because of experiences that I've had as a mother, experiences I had as a woman, and the impact that media has on our attitudes around things like, men being predators with regard to teenage girls, which is a huge problem, especially in the 80s. And it was reaffirmed over and over and over again in the 80s, that was okay. Like, we have all of these songs, pop songs, that people still sing, that I'm like, this is about an adult man fantasizing about a teenage girl. Like,
right.
Objectively, that's icky. So when I watched that scene, I was like, is this my perspective that is shifting this? Am I seeing this with my adult eyes? But as a kid, would I have interpreted this the same way? Would I have seen the eyes wide shut things? Would I have interpreted this as romantic, or would I have interpreted this somewhere that I think I remember it being romantic as a kid.
Right.
And
it's interesting because like my kid, the first time he saw it, instantly he was like, but that's because I think our kids are aware. Like our kids are so much more aware of problematic behaviors than we were. Yeah. Like it wasn't talked about. I mean, it was, but not in the way it is now. It's addressed head on now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. I think that they are almost hyper aware sometimes. Which is its whole other thing.
Well, and a lot of that too is what they have access to, right?
Right.
Social media and things like that, which we can complain about all the day long, but there's a lot of good that's come out of that. There's a lot of discussions that are being had. I mean, I've noticed that with my own kids, that their depth of understanding of things.
Oh, for sure.
Even at 11, 12, 13 years old I'm like, we haven't had this discussion. How do you know so much about this and have such a healthy perspective and conversation about it? And a lot of that really is these outside conversations that they're seeing that they can't avoid. And I think that relates back to media too. Jamila, you said earlier, the turn of the century. Wow, we were there, guys. First-hand accounts. But how things were just very kind of toned down for kids and patronizing. But then it sort of has to shift now, or has shifted, because they have access to so much media that's not that controlled group that we had. That these are the movies you watch. These are the channels you watch. It's like fragmented times a zillion.
Right.
So how do you match these TikTok things that they're seeing and still get kids to watch movies or these sort of traditional forms of media? You have to talk about the things that they're already talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's already there.
And I'm going to do this and then we get back to Labyrinth. I actually love to listen to people in my generation and the generation above. So I'm not going to pick on the boomers today. I'm going to pick on the older Gen Xers, because I'm starting to see it out of older Gen X people. They were not here for the boomers, doing the exact same shit to us. People, the amnesia is wild. But this whole Gen Alpha they're so soft and they're so this and I'm like, first of all, children are supposed to be soft. I don't know who needs to hear this. Children are supposed to be soft. They're not supposed to be hard.
Right.
We as adults aren't supposed to be hard. That's trauma, baby.
Yeah.
You are responding from a place of trauma if you think that kids need to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
But these kids are getting such a tremendous, and I will say this, it comes with the negative, right? Everything does. Everything is in balance. So there are some negative aspects here, but what they are getting is a level of understanding about themselves that we were not allowed to have, because a lot of us, because of the way things were structured when we were children, were kept in these bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
Where your parents befriended the same kind of people who had the same kind of thoughts. You went to school in these areas that were greatly segregated, which we also don't want to talk about, that the fact that our country is still largely segregated.
Yeah.
So you grew up around people in your same economic class. So you were sort of caught in this echo chamber until sometimes you went into the military and got moved around, or you went into, you went to college and you got to be around a churn of different people. So now what is happening is we have all of these kids who, even though my kids don't have access to social media, and we'll talk about that in a second, a lot of kids are having access to social media, or friends who have access to social media, and they're watching these conversations that are happening that are giving them language for things and concepts that we may have felt, but there were no words for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if parents are smart, and I am going to say this, if you are smart, you are going to allow these children to challenge you. and to help you address your own and identify at some point your own trauma, your neurodivergence, your embedded beliefs that need to just no longer exist. Like, they will challenge you and free you if you allow them to. But when we're talking about consumption of media, it's important to have these conversations and say, because social media doesn't have it all right. So sometimes your kids are going to come through with stuff and you're going to be like, whoa, hang on a second. Let's do some reframing. Let's add some context here because you got a snapshot. Let's build that out. But also, I'm going to encourage you to tell me how this makes you feel and how this sits with you. And I am going to listen to you with open ears and open heart. And I'm going to decide, is this my perspective? Or is this objective, as close to objective truth as we can get, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important for people not to hand wave the significant healing impact that Gen Alpha and Gen Z have the capacity for, just because they have language for shit that was out of reach for us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So true. I love what you said about how your children can help free you if you let them. Like, I'm thinking about, like, just examples. Even my son and I, like, not to get too into the weeds, he's 17 and he's recently gotten into like cooking and stuff, which is great. But like, he has a lot to say about like how I cook and how my husband cooks and how long we leave food out. And, and I found myself saying things to him like he's like, oh, you got to put stuff away after 2 hours. Cause I do the whole like Saturday morning, here's a bunch of fruit and food and just like help yourself when you get up. Cause I'm not standing in this kitchen all day making everyone breakfast. I got shit to do, but here you go. Oh, well, you should be putting that stuff away. Stuff can't sit out. And I'm arguing, well, like blueberries can sit out. No, they can't. Bacteria, da, 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 da. And I found myself saying, look, I have fed 6 people, 7 if you include myself. Not as often have I fed myself as I've fed all of you for this many years, and no one's gotten sick. And then I like hear the words coming out. And I said, you know what, though? I probably have something I can learn from you here. Because no one ever told me how long things be out. It's just like common sense to me, or I Googled it at some point in my adult life. Like, all right, tell me what you know. Tell me like what you're learning in that class. And that's a small example, right? Of me being like, well, maybe I could do that a different way.
It's so hard.
Why am I being defensive? And I'm going, well, you all sleep till noon, so I'm trying to leave you food and da-da-da. And he's just like, I just don't want anyone to get sick. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fair.
That's fair. Yeah. I encourage my kids. I encourage my kids to improve the system. I'm like, all right, no, I hear you. Now, this has always worked for me. I've never gotten sick, but I'm also a little loose and free with my, my food safety. But like, improve the system. Like, how would you change this? Or how can we do, if I'm telling you that I'm doing it for this reason, and I don't want it to go back in the fridge, because if it goes back in the fridge, I also live that life. If it goes back in the fridge, nobody is going to eat it. And I want you guys to eat. How can we improve this so that both of our needs are met here? Because like, being humble as an adult with your kids is incredibly important, but also like, they may say some shit that I'm like, what?
Oh yeah.
I never even thought about that. Yes, absolutely. Like, they may ask me why our tax is sad, and blow my mind, and also allow me to free myself from this trauma. So, anyway, so
it is like, too, like, if you had a lot of trauma as a kid, like, my first instinct for anything is to be defensive. Like, it doesn't, like, so I will come in hot in 2 seconds. If my kid says something, like, I am defensive, like that, I have to apologize all the time. And Troy is so good. He's so good about like, I mean, he was in the military, so he kind of like had to be. It was like survival. Like, you have to, like, you can't be reactionary like all the time. I'd be like, blow him up now. No, sorry. And then I'd be like, no, what did I do? What did I do? That was not right. But he is so good about being like, hey, like, just think about it for a second. And he's like, you don't have to react to everything they say right away. Like, you don't have to right away. So I always, so like your trauma, you don't want to pass on to your kids. Cause like you're saying how you just wanted to be like, well, that's exactly what I do. And then I'm like, actually what you said is smart. And I have to rewind. I have to rewind all the time. But that's something that I think our generation didn't have a lot of, was our parents rewinding and saying, hey, I'm really sorry. Like I can't ever remember it. My parents don't listen to my podcast, but I can never remember a time of either of my parents apologizing to me. Never. Ever. And I'm not going to fault them because they were doing better than the generation before them because I didn't get beat. So like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, but I feel like too, that comes into play with kids. And again, to circle back to what we were talking about in media and consumption and all the things, I learned this from Jamila, actually. I always tell my kids, you can argue with me. You don't have to believe the same as me, but you better come with research and receipts. Like, I don't care if you feel like that. Why? You have to know why. You can't just say because. Not good enough.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with me. And I will say my oldest, I mean, he's almost 18. So he's almost a full adult, which is bizarre. But he will come to me and he will have those receipts. And then that's really sucky is when he presents to me really good. I say that jokingly sucky. It's great. But it makes things so much more challenging because like we were having this huge discussion the other day because we don't agree on some of the same things politically. For the big ones, yes. Smaller things, not so much. And we were talking about healthcare because he was talking about it in his econ class. And I was like, well, that's not whatever. And he's like, well, actually, this, and this. And I was like, oh.
Oh.
Well, okay.
That's a well-formulated response.
I was like, oh, actually.
I had to learn, and we'll get off of it. I keep saying like we're going to get back. But one of the biggest things that I had to learn is not to take it personally. Like, but when you grow up, and we talk about this, and like I hold healing circles, and we talk about these kind of things because we need to talk about it. One of the things that I notice a lot in our generation is even though our parents, for a lot of us, like my parents did not hit me as much as they got hit, right? And so two things can be true at the same time. My parents did so much better than they grew up with, but like there were things that like still were not great.
Right.
And so for us, a lot of us were critiqued and criticized in place of being struck. And so we receive criticism badly because the times that we got criticized were times when our parents were it was punitive criticism. It was, you're not doing this right, and now you're going to get in trouble. Instead of just being like, hey, here's a way that we can do this better, because we're all growing and we make mistakes. And like, it wasn't and I'm speaking in generalities, it wasn't wrapped in this positive growth mindset. It was punitive. You're going to get criticized before you get punished. And so that gets into you. That becomes a pattern. And so we receive criticism and critique the same way. And it's personal. It's you're doing this to hurt me. And so when you have that reactive response, when our kids come up to us and say, here's a thing you could be doing better, or I noticed this, or this hurts my feelings when this happens, and they're trying to like communicate with us, a lot of us get reactive because, hey, when you criticize me, that's like a bad thing. And then add to that, we were told as children that when we got to be adults, we would be in charge and we wouldn't have to receive punitive punishment. We would get to enact that on someone else. So we have this trigger in us that's like, oh, I don't have to take your critique, right? Because I'm in charge now. And when you try to hurt me, I can hurt you back because I'm bigger. And so sort of dismantling all that to say, it's not personal. Like, you're telling me a thing because this is your experience of life, right? And I always say, like, my kids are not thinking about me that much. Like, they're saying a thing to me because
so true.
Because it occurred to them, because their brains are like still developing. And they're not thinking about, well, mom's going to take this and mom's got these patterns that she's trying to heal. They're not thinking about that. They're like, hey, when you make this, it sucks and I don't like it. Or when you say this thing to me, it's like, makes me have feelings and I'm concerned about my feelings because that's developmentally appropriate. So I just remind myself every day, like my kids' behavior is not about me. My kids' critiques are not about me, but how I respond to them is about me. And it's showing them how we respond to living with other people. And we're allowed to critique each other when we're living together.
Yeah.
We're allowed to express ourselves. We're allowed to talk about how we impact each other for the sake of compromise.
Yeah.
So like, I say all that to say, like, that's not about you, boo. Like,
yeah. Well, it's so funny because even this morning, right before I came to the studio, my husband and I dropped off one of our kids at the high school, and then he dropped me off here because of cars and all sorts of things. So, I could tell this child was just kind of having a rough morning. We were off school yesterday and just some relationship things at school, whatever. And like right before we dropped them off at school, they made a comment like, oh, is there like another hurricane out there? Because we just like didn't really get hit here by Hurricane Helene, but other places in Florida did. And my husband kind of like, I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. And this child literally, as they're walking out the door, well, maybe we could actually prepare this time. And then gets out and shuts the door. And I'm like, hello?
Wow.
And my husband's like, now the child's gone. And my husband to me, well, we and we did. And I was keeping an eye on it. And I said, just let it be.
Yeah.
This person's having a bad day and took it out on us right before they slammed that door. It's not a critique on what we did or didn't do to prepare for this non-event that happened to us.
Yeah.
Just let it be. Leave it alone.
They're having their moment.
And if you spent all day making a list of all the ways you prepared, when you see this child again, they are not even going to remember. So just let it go.
Yeah. Just let, and like, you're allowed to, like, I will get my husband in a room and I like do the talk, like, and then she said this to me and I was like, girl, you don't even know, like, I'm street, I'm hood, I will get on you, like they don't know how I'm healing, right? I'm healing and I'm trying not to get this trauma all over you, but here you are, like, trying to get this, and I will do that with my husband, like, because my feelings are valid and I'm allowed to have them, right? And so we go in our little powwows, and like, not powwows, I hate to use that term, but we go and we have our little conversations where we are just like venting our toxicness, and we acknowledge that that's what it is like, I have all these toxic patterns that I just need to let it out so that when I go talk to this person, I can be the like evolved parent who's like,
yes,
listen, I know that like that comment that you made was not at me, but also I'm a person and I have feelings, because I do say this to, like, I'm a person and I have feelings, and we need to be careful about the way that we interact with each other so that, we can minimize the hurt feelings. But also, sis, watch it. Like, here we are.
There's times Troy and I'll do the same thing. Usually it's him pulling me to be like, I'm like taking my earrings off. Like, I'm like ready. And then he's like, you need to say, because 100% of the time, if I just take a second, I will have a different reaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just remembering that. But, it's funny because my kids will tell me, like, if I start to get too in my trauma, they will say, it's not about you, Mom. And man, when you hear your kids say that, it pisses you off. But then it's like, oh, they're so right. Like,
my kids will tell me to take a breath and I hate it.
Oh God, me too.
But I'm like, you're right. They're like, maybe you need to go have a bath. And I'm like, because bath, like, that's like my code for like, when I need to go decompress, I go take it. And they're like, maybe you need to go
and then get
in a room by yourself and shut the door. And oh my gosh.
All right. So that was parenting hour with Jamila.
Parenting hour with Jamila.
We knew we were going someplace we didn't know was there.
Loop back to
that. We're gonna get back to Labyrinth right now. We'll just talk a little bit more. Right. Okay. So do you think we were talking about
I didn't say the thing that I didn't like.
Yeah, you did.
No, because we went right to the scene.
We did. We went to the scene. So that'll make the list. I will say I did not like. I'm in the camp with Danny where I didn't like Sarah. And I can see, Katie, you saying she didn't have, like, she did not learn and grow, right? Which was a big thing for the 80s. Everybody had to learn and grow. Like, everybody had to have the arc and the redemption arc, and you all had to be, like, changed at the end. And she didn't. She was still, like, she was bratty at the beginning, and she was bratty at the end, and I'm sure she's going to yell at Toby again. But she did go get him, and she went to extraordinary lengths to get him. Now, whether she went because she wanted to or because she didn't want to get in trouble with her dad, I don't know. It's both are on the table. But I did not like her because, to me, she is like the embodiment of white feminism, where, like, you don't have to listen. You don't have, like, these people who are talking to you live here in this place. And you are steady not listening to anything that they have to tell you. You are not allowing yourself to absorb the knowledge that you don't deserve, but they are giving to you anyway. Yeah, I mean, were they a little questionable sometimes? Sure. But at the very beginning, she could have been done if she had just like chilled out and listened to what people were saying. So that, to me, like, there's so much, like, white feminism in that, of, like, going into people's spaces and, like, not listening to them and doing whatever you want. Also, the baby as a mom, so it didn't bother me as much as younger, but, like, as a mother of so many children, the crying baby and miserable Toby,
like, he had such real tears.
Yes. And we'll get into that with the trivia, but, like, he cried the whole time.
Yes.
And, like, stuff that, like, was supposed to be funny and lighthearted, I was like, stop throwing that baby. Like, he is a human being. Knock it off. And then I didn't love the ending because it just, like, there was such this wonderful, like, story and this land, and it was fully immersive, and then I felt like the ending was just kind of like, oh, well, you caught him, and now he's kind of gonna give up because you said this whole thing. One of the things that I think the story kind of fell was that, and I don't know if it got lost on the edit, like, you have to think about it, like, did it get lost in editing, was that I think the end would have been more impactful if they had stronger ties to whatever she was quoting from throughout the movie.
That's true.
Like, she could have identified things because she was like, oh, this was because she was clearly referencing a piece of literature.
Right.
If she had said, oh, I know what this is because it was in this book, that similar to Neverending Story. It was in this book that I read. And it was, oh, and now I know what to say to him because this was in this adventure book that I was reading. I don't think that they made that tie strong enough.
Yeah.
So it seemed, I mean, I got there as a kid, like, I understood it, but I think that you were sort of, I understood it because I wanted to like it, if that made sense.
Yeah.
I don't think that thematically it was, or narratively, it was well done, or as well as it could have been.
Yeah, the ending was kind of empty. Like, it just felt very rushed. Didn't we say that last time? Like, it felt like it just, like, oh, we got to end it now. And again, like you said, it could have been something on the editing floor.
Could have been, yeah.
But actually, that kind of gives us a segue into our trivia, because didn't you say there was another type of ending that there
was another ending to the movie where Jareth turns into a god. So when she confronts him, she punches him.
Yeah.
Sarah punches him, and then he turns into a little goblin and runs away.
I love it. I would have loved that.
You would have liked that?
Yeah, I would have liked that. I would have liked that.
I have mixed feelings about it. I
think I
liked
would've
him
liked it.
turning into the owl.
Yeah.
I liked the mystery that it left behind of like, is Gareth, not Gareth, Jareth, can Jareth come back? Like, where's he going? Like,
Yeah.
I left it open. But yeah. So that was one of the other proposed endings.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that just would have been satisfying. Like,
Maybe that's it.
Like, pop you in the face and then
Yeah.
boom, you're a goblin. Like, it's
maybe she had popped him in the face. Maybe, but again, there's still that weird like adult child kind of,
true.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna say this, that level of overt violence, one of the big things that I have, one of the big problems that I have when we have narratives led by women or girls, is that they have to, and I'm going to be very careful in the way that I say this, they have to emulate masculinity in order to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we lose something in that. And not necessarily men versus women, that kind of thing, but masculinity and femininity both are strong aspects and attributes. And so that sort of overt violence is a masculine trait. Her just using her words to dismantle him, to me, was a very strong stance to take for her. And she didn't have to lose her femininity in order to win.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Also, she was in her head for most of the movie.
Yeah.
She was figuring it out, you know. As much as I didn't like her, she was thinking her way, even through that scene that we didn't like. She thought her way out of that scene.
True.
So
good point.
To me, the punch, even though there's a satisfaction to it, would have felt off tone.
Yeah. Again, here I am, reactionary.
Yeah. Punch him in the face, girl.
Take those earrings off.
Yeah. And
hold my earrings.
Oh
scrap.
My gosh.
He's ruining your whole night. All right. So let's do some quick trivia.
Yay.
Let's do it. All right. Toby the baby is actually the name of the little boy.
I love that.
That was his actual name. He is the son of Brian Froud, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who designed the puppets for the movie. Toby's name in the script was Freddie.
Oh.
But the baby wouldn't react when his name was called.
Yeah.
So they just let him have his own name.
I mean, as babies do.
Right.
Yeah.
If they even react to their own name. Right.
And we call him a baby in the grand scheme of things. He is a baby, but he is a toddler.
He's a toddler for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So by then he does have name recognition.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody is screaming a weird name at me, especially because I'm going to say he didn't really want to be there. In the scenes where Toby is seated on the Goblin King Jareth's, David Bowie's lap, the baby has a fixed and hypnotized look off camera.
Yeah.
As Jareth is talking to him, right? Well, what was happening is that he screamed so much during the takes that the only way they could keep him quiet was by David Bowie wearing this glove puppet called Sooty, out of frame. And so as he was talking, he was also using the puppet to keep Toby entertained, so they could get through the scene.
I love this. I feel like that's just so extra because I would envision a different set person with the puppet.
Yeah.
So he could act and then that person's trying to get the baby's attention. But no, he's just oh, give me a sock puppet.
I was ready for you to do a David Bowie impersonation.
I was so close, but then I didn't want to do it wrong. I was my brain was nope, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it.
I think as I read, there was both. There was a crew member at some points doing it, and then also because he had to sit and interact with Jareth too. So I just think that hilarious.
I love
that there was a puppet.
That's
I wish I could find a picture of the puppet just because I'm curious.
Real.
All right, so David Bowie did the gurgling of the baby in Magic Dance.
I do not. I do not. So now, not only was he wearing a fun cod piece and had killer makeup, he also can do a baby gurgle.
He also does baby gurgles.
And sock puppets.
And sock puppets.
Yeah.
The talent is endless.
Endless.
All right. Jareth's name is only spoken five times in the entire movie, which like I felt like it was more.
I know.
And I think 4 of the 5 times was by Hoggle.
Hoggle.
Yeah. Which, you know, makes sense, I guess, because Hoggle knew Jareth. Anyway. All right. Michael Jackson, Prince, and Mick Jagger and Sting were all in consideration for the part of Jareth.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Jim Henson wanted Sting.
Ew, no.
I know.
Lame.
I know. He wanted Sting, but it was actually his kids who talked him into auditioning David Bowie.
That's amazing.
That's so great.
But I mean, come on, Prince.
Prince would have been great.
Prince would have been amazing.
And you know what? I just thought about Michael Jackson. Do you remember? I don't know if anybody went to Disney in the late 80s and he had the Captain EO.
Captain EO.
Oh my gosh. I loved that so much.
I don't think that Michael Jackson could have pulled off the sinister, like,
no.
Prince had a sinister kind of playfulness to him that I think, I mean, he just would have been Prince. He would have just been like, it would have been the same with it. He would have just been himself.
Yeah.
And I think by this point he had done Purple Rain. I don't think he had done Under the Cherry Moon, but you know, so he was sort of known for his terrible. It was terrible. His acting is objectively terrible, but I think he just would have been Petty Prince, and it would have been great. But I don't know, Sting and
no Sting.
I know Michael Jackson would have just been. I think he would have just. I would have identified with him. Like, I just feel like he would have been too gentle.
I was just thinking, like, I don't think he could have pulled off the fierceness that David Bowie had. And also Prince would have brought. Like, they have that fierceness. And I don't think of fierce when I think of Michael Jackson and any era of his. I think of other things, but not fierceness.
Yeah. And Prince would have had that weird sexual vibe to him.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
He would have the codpiece. He would have wanted it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. It would have also been more glitter for no reason.
Way more.
Actually, I would like a bedazzled codpiece. That sounds fun.
For yourself?
I don't think I would ever wear it, but I'd have it. I'd own it, and I'd pull it out for conversation.
Yeah.
I would. Yeah.
I like it.
I'd be like, oh, that's my bedazzled codpiece. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to try it on?
Let me tell you about that.
Oh my God.
Let me tell you why I have that for no reason. So the various things that Jareth does with the crystal balls, rolling them around his arms and his hands, are not camera tricks. They are not even special effects. They were done by a professional juggler.
Nice.
Named Michael Motion. So he actually stuck his hands like under, like, you know, we talked about this, like, when, you know, anyway, put his hands like under Jareth and then did all of the tricks in front of David Bowie.
That's hilarious. That's like the old youth group game. That's what I was saying. Like, we would do skits and like somebody would stand there, put their arms behind their back, and you would stand behind them and stick your arms through and do all the funny things. So that's how they filmed.
Feed them. You have to feed them. Like, that was for some reason a requirement with 100%. Those games.
Marshmallows.
You just want to shove something in and like thinking back on it is disgusting. But yes, same concept.
But yeah, that's great. I love that. That's so 80s.
Yeah, it was. What's even cooler is because he was behind David Bowie the entire time, he had to perform all those tricks blind. So it was all done. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And you're like hugging David Bowie the whole time.
Yeah. And trying to be like, I'm okay. Everything is fine.
I'm really fine.
Don't panic.
It's just laying on my thighs and I'm juggling. It's fine.
I promise I will not hit you in the face with this. It's going to be fine. All right. The owl in the title sequence is computer generated. It is the first attempt at photorealistic CGI animal characters in a feature film.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell it's 80s CGI.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
it's 80s CGI, absolutely. But listen, blew my mind when I was a kid. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It was
really cool.
Mind blowing.
Okay, this one kind of makes me sad just because I really love Jim Henson. Due to its failure when originally released, this is the final movie directed by Jim Henson. His son has revealed that the time after Labyrinth's release was very difficult for Henson. However, it wasn't long before the flop gained a huge cult following, restoring his faith in his work.
Oh,
good.
Yeah, because it was a box office failure.
Yeah, it was a bomb.
Yeah, people did not. In fact, I don't even remember watching it till we had it like on VCR tape, or it was like on HBO or something like that.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I did not see that one in the theater.
It's
I
really
think I got it from the Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Or the Errol's. It was Errol's at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then yet here we are in 2024 talking about it, right? Like that idea of legacy and all those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard when you're, especially a Jim Henson, who objectively everyone loves everything you ever do.
Yeah.
To feel then like, oh, but not everyone loved this.
Right.
Yeah.
But to still be like proud of that work, the quality that you all have talked about, and the puppets, and to kind of remove yourself from the commercial side of it and be like, yeah, but I made art for art's sake, and the right people will always find that. I don't think I'm the right person, but y'all found it. And I mean, just like,
I think you needed to have it at a very vulnerable, impressionable stage in your life.
I think so.
It's too late for me. It's too late for me. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. But
keep hitting the mic.
But it's very inspiring for like as a performer and an artist that like not everything has to be the hit of the century or even popular with people you like, you know, even in community theater, for it to matter and to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and make an impact on someone.
Yeah.
You know, anyway.
Or just create for creation's sake.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Sometimes you can just make things.
You can.
Yeah.
And you can
not
like
everything.
them.
Yes. Well, okay. We've kept you for 100 hours total.
Yeah. It's so many hours. Oh, wait. There's one more.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
There's one more. And this is the important one because we had another conversation about this. The movie filmed next door to Legend.
That's right.
I know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's actually the perfect one to end on because you guys, Jamila is going to come back. Katie's never seen another cult classic called Legend. And we're going to watch it. We're going to watch it together though. I have to see your face.
So you can keep her awake also.
I'm going to throw popcorn at your face. You're not going to be able to fall asleep during Legend. I'm just saying.
We'll watch it in the lobby.
No puppets in this one. There's no puppets in this one. It's all people.
It's all amazing costumes.
See, that's good.
It's all a lot of costuming and people and small people.
And
So
she's gonna come back and we're gonna do that. Yeah, we're gonna do Legend. So thank you so much, Jamila, for coming back on and redoing this conversation.
Yes.
But I will say, I think this one was even better. Than our
definitely.
With an hour of parenting advice.
There was like, y'all just take that for what, you know.
I love it.
Listen, the kids who are out there, get your parents to listen to this episode, okay? We'll fix them for you.
We will.
Just kidding. I can't.
And to our kids who listen, we're trying, okay?
We're trying. See? We said we were. We said it into a microphone that we're trying. So it must be true.
And it must be true. Keep apologizing because that's what I do. Anyways, thank you, Jamila. And thank you for listeners for joining us here on Generation Between. If you liked what you heard, share us with all your family and friends, no matter what generation they belong to. Give us a like, give us a follow on all the social media platforms, and give us reviews because we still need those. That bumps us up in the lovely algorithms that I don't understand how they work, but Katie does. So do the reviews. You can also find us over on Patreon where you can have access to our bonus after show. You never know what we're going to talk about over there. And yes, at some point we will have that special merch we keep talking about. That is supposed to be my job and I am failing at that. So it's coming. I swear to God, it's coming. But until next time, everyone, don't take too many things for granted or the Goblin King might pay you a visit. Ooh. With his cat peas.
With his cat peas.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.